Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I know it's end of the week and you might be exhausted, but we're happy to have you, and we're really excited to talk to you guys about everything about an app ecosystem. Before we do that, maybe just really brief intros. If you want to go down the panel and just introduce ourselves a bit.
I feel like I'm at a Senate hearing. Sandeep Patel, IRAT. We make application tutorials.
That's it. Hi, everybody. I'm Ilyas Khwaja. I'm a product leader at Goldcast, where I lead data and platform teams. I've been in tech for around 15 years, 10 of those with SaaS companies, worked with SMBs, large organizations, and now I'm kind of building software for other B2B companies in SaaS space. And I think like my sort of, if I find a common thread across all my experience, means I've worked on product, which has allowed businesses to connect with their customers, understand them, and have a better relationship with them. So happy to talk about that today.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Igor Belgorutsky. I'm with Fast CTO. I guess I'm the nerd of the group. I've been doing startups for about 20 years. I've had a couple of exits, but mostly failures. And now I work with a lot of startups, helping them avoid some of the mistakes that I've done. I'm also an angel investor and a bunch of other stuff.
Cool. And I'm Shireen Shaheen, and my background's in product marketing. I was like, why am I on the engineering track? But anyway, I'm here. This is all new information for me too, so I'm also learning. But yeah, background's product marketing, working with B2B companies in the SaaS space for over 10 years. All right, so why don't we kick it off with a few of us got together when we were just planning for this panel, and it was funny because the first topic that came up in our Zoom call was, well, what are we talking about when we say ecosystem? Are we talking about an internal ecosystem or an external one? So just thought I'd open it up to whoever wants to start. What's the difference? And how many kinds of ecosystems are there, and what are the differences between them?
Me?
Yeah,
All right.
I think
So I had a very strong stance on this. I had a lot of opinions. Yeah. So my whole thing is, like charity starts at home. Same thing with ecosystems. You can't go out and build out a marketplace or an ecosystem or anything like that unless you have the facilities in-house to actually know what's going on out there. So I'm all about organization inside, regardless of what's happening outside. So I'll talk a little bit about that, I think, throughout. That's what ecosystem means to me. There's like the stickiness aspect, which we'll also talk about, like, okay, how do you get apps out there to get users to stay within like your stuff? And we actually have I almost wore a useful shirt today because I think one of our clients and one of the Boston startups, Useful, actually did a really good job of doing that, but we'll talk about that in a little bit too.
Cool. Anybody else want to chime in?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I've been in this data and platform team for a long time, and I think of that. I mean, as you said, I mean, really, for me, it's around building that ecosystem. Is around also thinking around using your own product within the organization too, right? So drinking your own champagne or eating dog food. So I think that's another way of thinking about it as well. Building a software that is easy to consume for other outside customer, but how do you find out about that? Is by first, like your own teams kind of build on top of that, right? Using that infrastructure. But I guess I'm also curious about how you decide, once you decide to kind of like extend your functionality, like how can you really increase the value of your product by partnering with other companies?
For me, ecosystem is like anytime they're either trying to put data into your application or take data out. So it's just building and helping your customer do that.
So I'm going to ask a variety of questions. So the way we organized our questions was getting started as like a theme, and then launching your ecosystem. Then a couple questions around just more general ecosystem, and then some forward-thinking questions. So just giving some context into how we're going to go about the panel. So as far as getting started, and we did start this one already a little bit, what's typically a trigger at an organization to even know, oh, I need to start thinking about that? Like at what stage, or is there something that happens that you're like, it's time for an ecosystem?
I'm surrounded by two founders here, so I guess
Yeah.
I'll let them.
I think the way I would think about it is going back to the personas, right? Of like who is using your app or your software or whatever it is, and for what reason, right? Because oftentimes, and if you haven't done that research like before you launched, it's not who you think it's not why you think, right? And so as an example, and I'm not here to pitch that, I launched a startup on Monday. It's called App Buttons. And launching this startup, I had to build out an ecosystem to support our initial users. And that ecosystem wasn't even my apps. It's not like I said, oh, here's an app and here's another app that supports that app. It was like a knowledge base, right? Because I know that some people will go and look there first. Like there's people like me that don't sign up for something until they look at the documentation. So my documentation better be good. You know, it's a chat bot. It's like all this other stuff that's part of your offering that isn't always development, but now it builds a whole brand identity that appeals to different types of people who are coming looking at your product.
So
Did I
starting
answer
with
the question?
Yeah. So starting with the I mean, what I first heard, which I like, starting with the persona. So the
Yeah, like
customer, really thinking about
understand-
them first.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to lead into the next one, but anyone can jump in. Elias, this one was for you. And as a product manager, I think you do this a lot. How do you really learn about the customer and understand their needs and behaviors for something like this? Like, where do you start with that?
Yeah, I guess like as you was talking about personas, understanding the persona, I think that's the first stage really. You kind of figure out, okay, and then as a startup, like you obviously don't have like tons of resources, so you have to really focus on the persona that you're doing. So I feel like, you know, where your integration strategy or ecosystem strategy should align with what is your strategy as a business to which market you're targeting, right? And then like there's a lot of different ways you can really investigate. There's like all the communication. If you're lucky enough to be in an organization which has a support team, which has like researchers, work with them to find out more about them. Like, I mean, use your network to find out what are the main sort of use cases which are most important for your in persona, right? What's their main job they're doing? What are the jobs to be done for these users? Where can I really add value through integrations on top of my product to help them do this job to be done, right? And using your network also gives you that like sort of knowledge where you can look at what your competitors are doing and like, you know, find out what not to do as well, because that's also a lot of time you figure out from other people, like, hey, like I've used this integration, but it's just pain in the ass. It's really like, you know, it's just going to give you like so much trouble just maintaining it. So that is also, I feel, a very good source of knowledge of where to start from and what are the problems to focus on.
So customers and then some competitive research.
Yep.
Cool.
For me, in the early days, our company is very, very small engineering wise. So we had to focus on our product. So I always knew that we wanted to build an app ecosystem, but we never had the engineering resources to do it. So the idea is really to stay really, really close to the customer, talk to them as much as you can, track where they're putting your product, or the data from your product. So that really we really did it in a very methodical way. So once we found one or two customers that were putting our product into another product, that's where we started to build out these integrations. And we kind of did it one by one. So there was no like big bang moment of launching an app store.
Yeah.
It was just like one after the other after the other.
Especially with not a lot of engineering resources, which is probably majority of the group here.
Yeah.
May not have a lot of resources
Yeah.
to do that.
And we tend to in the early days, we made a lot of mistakes because we want to go after the big companies. So we build out like Google integrations and Slack integrations. But then you realize that you spent all of this time building out these integrations and nobody really uses it.
Yeah.
So that's why we had to go to this more methodical approach.
Yeah.
But it goes back to the stickiness, right? Like the reason that you implemented Slack is because you thought it was a value add for your users that would keep them on your platform. And I think that's a very valuable thing to do, but not everyone's a Salesforce, not everyone's a HubSpot, right? Like you can't not everyone's Atlassian. All these places have giant marketplaces, right? I think it's important to recognize that it's not just tech, right? So your ecosystem, like the stuff that you're putting out into the world that people associate with your brand, it could be as simple as like rockstar customer service. That's part of your ecosystem. That's like part of a product that people associate with your thing, right? It could be physical assets, right? Like swag or whatever, to a smaller extent. But everything adds to it the same way that a Slack integration does.
I guess tagging along that thing, I think it's really important to really focus on simple and really focused integrations, right? I think there's a tendency to think a lot of companies or new founders can fall this trap that I need to have 100 integrations with all the products in the market that you have, right? And there are like some other third-party vendors which can have this illusion that you have integration with hundreds of other software. You don't really have that, and you have to kind of really focus on the right people, right product, right person. You have limited resources. You're not going to be able to kind of do like even 10 integration. You have to do like really 1 or 2 integration. Also, if you're thinking about Salesforce is like a beast, right? You can do a really big integration with managed package or something, or you can do like, all you need to do is really send out the lead information to Salesforce. That could be done by simple like API integration, right? Just focus on that. That's the biggest value you can provide, right?
But yeah, to your point, Zapier though, like on integration, because I think you probably like in the back of your head was talking about Zapier. Zapier is not as hard as people think. It's like if you're doing a SaaS thing and you want to put on your website, like I integrate with thousands of apps, spend a week of engineering time, and now you have a Zapier app. And now you could actually say that. Yeah.
And I would also add, follow the breadcrumbs, right? Because in the end, there's so many different types of software, infinite amounts of software. And for us, it was really like seeing this trend. For us, it was learning management system, LMSs. So once we found that, hey, there was a group of customers that were really using our product with all these different types of LMSs, we're like, hey, we should just direct our focus toward there instead of trying to go across the board, really hone in on that one segment of customers.
At least starting there.
At least starting there, yeah.
So in this nature of limited resources and getting started, who's usually involved? So you've decided to start an ecosystem. You've done some of the research for personas. Who do you involve at your organization to actually get going? And let's answer it both ways. If you have limited resources, you go to your board of advisors. You like, how do you start? And then if you have a team and you're lucky enough to have an engineering team, who else is involved? Like,
yeah, I'm probably the wrong person to ask for that, but because we did it one by one.
That's true. Your name wasn't on this question, so I don't know why you're answering this question. But
So
no, you can go.
No, that's it. So we went one by one, so it wasn't really. There was no really thought process behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's really like depends on the stage of the organization where you are, right? So as a really small organization, the founder and the critical group, I mean, the sort of like cycle you have or like make a decision is pretty small, right? And but as you grow, you have different teams. So you have, I think the most important people for me as a PM, which is kind of responsible for like managing apps right now, is like having this go-to-market team, having the customer success team, having the sales and marketing team as partnership. You obviously have the engineering team and the product development team, like really focuses on you responsible to really focus on the persona, focus on the use cases. What are the strategic goals for the company you want to do, right? So you want to really like clarify with your team, are we doing this integration for retention? Are we doing this integration to user adoption, or are we doing it for revenue sources, right? And if you have those goals in mind, then everybody needs to align on those and basically go from there, right? And I think as I said, I mean, could be different players. Everybody's involved in different stage of like releasing app ecosystem.
Yeah, I'll go at it from a different side. I would say your customer, because at the end of the day, your customer is going to tell you the right customer, like your champion customer, your first kind of early adopters are going to tell you what it will take for them to stay, right? And for people like them to use it more. And to give you a real like live currently going on example. So I mentioned app buttons. So the app buttons came out of my own idea. Like I like a lot of our startups, right? Like you have a problem and you're like, other people might have that problem. So you build, if you're me, you're build a startup. And we launched it. And then literally I forced someone to use it. And they gave me a use case and an entire industry that is so much better than my problem that I think we're literally like, we launched on Monday and I think we're pivoting tomorrow. So like it's, but it's part of like, and so that industry has its own, it's like entire suite of tools that are now going to be part of the ecosystem I have to build up around this thing, rather than what I thought. So it's your end users.
Well, that also comes back to just starting small or step. That's not, sorry, I forget who said it, but starting step by step, because you're going to learn. I mean, within 5 days, you're like already learning. So this is a question for you now. So let's get to like actually launching. How would you describe the launch of an app ecosystem? It's been built. Then what? Like, what does that mean?
So yeah, we kind of did everything backwards. So we built out. So the whole thing is to talk directly to the customer, as many customers as you can, track as much data as you can. Where is the data moving from? And then as you start building out these integrations, make sure you tell your customers to use it, the ones that you use the two products together. And then over time, you'll build out the store. And so now we're actually backtracking and creating these use case videos, and then partnering up with actual people that are that we're integrating with. So we're basically contacting all of their AEs and saying, hey, now we have this pool of mutual customers that find value in using our two tools together. So making them aware of it. Now you've got this whole sales force that can start like promoting your product. Almost. Yeah. So the idea is basically resellers and referral partners as casual as you can, because the AE is at the front line. So they hear from the customer what is the problem that they're trying to solve. And so once they hear some key words, they can say, oh, by the way, did you know IRAD has this thing? And so that's how we kind of attacked it.
So, but even more specific, that all makes sense. But how did you, I mean, I imagine there was some marketing involved to let your customers even know, or was it so small that you were just kind of on calls and letting people know?
It's kind of we let because we do have a lot of data on our actual customer. So it's like, what is their tech stack? So when we do build out this integration, we are able to message them saying that it's live,
available, and
it's available. Yeah. So there was no big splashy event.
Okay, cool. And any challenges or like risks to look out for when you're, and anyone can take these questions, but when you're launching an app ecosystem? I threw that one in there.
Yeah. I'll give an anecdote. Do you guys remember that Microsoft had a phone?
Yeah.
Does everybody remember that? Am I too old? No. So Microsoft had the market share in phones in like the late 2000s, like right when iPhone came out. And they had an app store way before Apple had an app store. Except what Microsoft did is they put out this SDK and they basically announced with big fanfare, we have an app store. Hey, developers, come build for us. And then they released this app store and there was nothing on it because they released it without like seeding it. Apple went the other route. Apple secretly, semi-secretly, talked to game development companies, developers for like a year, 2 years, right? And they basically said, hey, we will help you build apps for our forthcoming app store. So when Apple announced their app store, there's already like 100,000 apps on it, right? I mean, history knows what the better strategy was, right? So I would say like no fanfare. Like fanfare is when, you get after your ecosystem, like if we're talking the ecosystem of like marketplace, that kind of stuff, after it already has users, after it already has proven use cases, white papers you could put on your website, and then you turn one of these like use cases into the announcement of like, hey, we have a marketplace, and by the way, like QuickBooks is on it, or whatever else is on it. That's how I would do it.
Like a beta, not intentionally, but it sounds like almost like a beta phase little bit before you kind of formally announce it.
I guess like my philosophy now, like if you're adding more integrations to your product, right now it's like don't even build one unless you have a couple of customers at least who are gonna be using it from day one, and you don't stop building until they're activated. Really, like they really use it day to day. So you're gonna iterate until it's really useful for them. So if you're not gonna do it, if you're gonna do it, okay, a lot of people are using like, let's say, Marketo integration. Like, I mean, you don't have any customer in mind, you're gonna build it wrong, because then customers, everybody uses differently. So don't even build it until you have a partner who is a customer who is gonna use it from day one.
So I'm guessing we sort of already talked about this, but how do you start to think about the diversity of these applications? Because it can go so many directions. I mean, Sandeep, you did start a little bit with this of like pick a lane, stay focused, maybe one vertical or one.
Yeah, because it's like anything else. In the early days, you're going to kind of talk to a bunch of different customers, and you might build this spray and pray approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just plant seeds everywhere, and then as you see something growing faster than the others,
You're going to go that way.
you're going to go that way. And you know, because you're limited. That's the whole thing. It's like when you're a startup, you're starting out, you don't got the resources, so you got to stay super nimble and super lean in terms of like building this out. So that's the thing is pick a lane, prove it out, and then start growing out of that.
And maybe this is more for mature organization. This is like my experience from like working in Salesforce Commerce, where the diversity of applications, that integration that we had was kind of based on the personas that we support. We're kind of managing a commerce store, right? And the jobs to be done for them. So think of an example of you're running a commerce store, so you have your product catalog. Those are in PIMS or ERPs. So you need to have like integrations on PIMS and ERP to kind of bring those in. Then how do people find product at the store? So you have those things like Algolia or Bloomreach. Those are integrations which are like more search and discovery based. Then you also have checkout sort of integrations with PayPal or Square, those companies. So you are looking at it from a really perspective of like, okay, who are your key personas and what are the jobs to be done they're doing, and then really filling out the holes. But it takes a while to get to that maturity level. So yeah,
I think the difference is, right, like, so in your Salesforce example, who went to whom, right? Was it Salesforce going to Algolia and saying, hey, you guys should integrate with us, or was it Algolia begging Salesforce to integrate with them?
yeah,
Right. So no one in this room, I think, is in Salesforce position. I mean, if you are, raise your hand. No, right? No one in this room is a Microsoft. No one in this room is a Nike that has like apps in like 50 different directions, right? I think the focus is, pick a lane, right? Like you're building out value adds to your core competence in the initial kind of like rounds of your startup's growth, right? So you have a core competence, you have an app, maybe it's web-based, maybe it's app-based, and you want to add a value add, right? And maybe it's in-app, maybe it's an integration, but it's always like in that same lane. It's only after like a fairly long while, like if you're thinking Slack, right? Slack's first bunch of integrations were to make chatting better, right? But now you look at Slack and there's like video in there, there's a whiteboard in there, there's all sorts of nonsense in there, but that's like after a while, right? The first like sort of integrations I had were like core competence enhancements.
Add the nonsense later.
Yeah, add the nonsense.
Sounds good.
Who's used the whiteboard in Slack? Anybody?
I haven't, no.
No.
Or like Canvas.
No.
It's called Canvas or something.
Who used the whiteboard in Figma? No one. Exactly. You did? Yeah, the Fig Jam.
We use it all the time. We got rid of Miro, so we can just pay for one. It does the exact same thing.
I like Miro.
Elias, this one was for you. So it's a little bit more of a product engineering question. What are some of the best ways or tips you have on ensuring a seamless integration? As seamless as you can get.
That's a loaded question. How much time do we have?
I don't know. 2 more minutes.
Right. I think like it's basically if I need to like sort of summarize it, it's really you need to like partner from the beginning till the end with all the different part organizations. Customer focus is like number one, right? I mean, talking to customers from day one, really understanding the needs, really understanding on the use case you're building this integration for, right? And then involving your UX designers. We have your UX designer head over here too, and like making that part of your product so that whatever you're building doesn't seem like out of place in the overall set of product, right? Then your engineering as well. So you as a product manager, I mean, for me specifically, you have to kind of get involved into like really figuring out like what is like the function requirement, also not like non-function requirement, and also the scalability. What is the target market that what will basically suit our need, and be entirely focused on that. I don't try to deviate from it as well. And then like you have like from your go-to-marketing teams, like being making them involved in from the beginning, right? And then the last part I was talking about really having partner uh, with a customer, make sure that they're activated. They're just not really install the application. They're using it day to day, and don't stop until that happens, because then you're gonna find out a lot of issues which are stopping people from using it in day to day work. And if you just ship something and then like forget about it, it's like you're not gonna find out that. So I think making that until that's successful, I think that's the key for me.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, getting a customer on a phone call is very, very hard, if not impossible. So the key is to basically track as much as you can. So via product. So you could actually see where they're using it, how they're using it. That'll answer a lot of the preliminary questions to see if you should be continue developing on it. Because getting them to jump on a call or answer an email, you got a better chance of hitting the lottery.
It's the same thing I was gonna say. So like put analytics around everything.
Yeah.
And analytics are not trivial. Like collecting the right information is surprisingly difficult, and you're probably not gonna get it on the first try. But there's a lot of tools out there, and there's some that are like fairly free. You could do a lot with like Google Analytics, and it's a pain in the butt to set up, but you could do a lot with it, and you should track more than you think you need.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think like more of a qualitative feedback, I think that helps you more at the beginning when you're launching it. And I know it's hard to get people on board, but it's one of those things. If you're focusing on that, I think like for me that's like the most important thing, right? Analytics as well, definitely just tag everything, getting responses. That will help you like get adoption if people are not adopting it. Where are they stopping as well? Your user experience, like use something like Full Story as application for that. But yeah, I think like, but if you're lucky enough, or if you have the relationship with customer, get them partnered. Partner with them.
Does Full Story have rage click detection? You guys know about rage click? So there's a tool called Hotjar, which whatever, it's fine. There's better ones out there. But Hotjar has had this thing for a while called rage click detection, so they'll track like a user's journey through your app. And if they notice like literally rage clicking, like the button doesn't work, like because they don't know what the button's supposed to do, but they know that the user is upset, and they'll actually like you could put metrics around that. And but that goes back to your like how do you make it seamless?
Yeah.
You might think it works, and then you get rage click detection.
But back to the comment, I agree. It's hard to get customers on the phone, even in the work I do. It's hard to do that. But if we include them early on,
Yeah.
which we've been saying,
Build together.
If you build together, I think the hope would be you have some they're sticky with you. Like you included them in the whole process. So the hope is you can get usually as little as like 5 customers and do a quick interviews. You'll start to see a pattern of feedback. So it's not impossible. I do think it's hard to get customers on the call, but I don't think it's impossible if you involve them throughout.
Yeah, and also the power of Amazon gift cards.
Power of money, yeah.
Yeah.
It does work.
That's true. Yeah.
I usually do if it's a good gift card. Sign me up. Okay, so the conversation already started to go here, which I love when that happens. But the next question was going to be, how do we measure stickiness in this process? I'm guessing that's the tracking analytics. But anything else to add around, I guess, how do you know it's working? Like, how do you know it's sticky?
Well, you track your revenue, and you track your churn, and you correlate it with rage clicks.
Yeah.
And you kind of make some assumptions.
I feel that like many different, goes back to initial, like what was the initial goal for building integration, right? Was it retention? Was it like, daily active usage engagement? So if it's engagement and you track, okay, daily active users, monthly active users, those sort of OKRs, KPIs that you set for your product, right? And you can track that. Some other way, which I think, thinking back at my experience at Constant Contact, was where stickiness is kind of measured like when customers are onboarded, how many emails they sent and how many contacts they added in the first few months, right? Similarly, at Goldcast right now, we're looking into like, okay, first few months, how many events you're holding, right? And that kind of becomes tricky if you're building a part of a product which may impact it in a way. So it's really like working with the rest of the team, trying to figure out this for the whole cohort, where okay, you have these. I mean, what's stopping people from creating new events, right? I mean, is it like, are they getting frustrated because they don't have those integration? They have to manually like download data and then upload it somewhere else, right? And so they can abandon it. So if really your goal is for stickiness, I mean, if are people using your product now anymore at where they're doing more events because of that, because it's such a much nicer experience that you don't have to do that, right? So that's the impact you make, but it's like it's not really direct that you can figure out by just like releasing one thing.
But yeah, so that's exactly so. Going back to app buttons, so release app buttons on Monday. I gave a bunch of people logins. I'm like, I'm giving it to you for free. Go do it, and I could track the signups. And then I'm like, pretty excited. I'm like, day one, I got 50 signups, forced signups because I told them to go sign up. And I look at my metrics. I'm like, they made 3 buttons, and I'm like, okay, well, they made 3 buttons, but are they clicking them? You guys don't know what app buttons does, but clicking them was important. It's a button. And so now like we added, like we weren't tracking button clicks. We were tracking buttons, but not button clicks. And so now what we could actually do is, this is like day 4 into the startup, is actually go to these people and say like, hey, you made a button, you're not clicking it. Why not? Does it not do what you want? You did make a button. What can I do to help you make a button?
And sometimes it's not even product at all. Like maybe they weren't even aware of the integration. This is my marketing hat, but
Yeah.
how is the onboarding for that integration? So maybe the integration's perfect, but they're not using it for some other reason.
Yeah, so it's the same care that goes into creating a sales funnel. You do it on this side, right? Monitoring the entire process from, hey, was the person made aware of it, and then tracking it all the way through it. And it's kind of easy to see if they're using the integration.
I think that's the easier part, actually. Yeah.
And then investing, once you see that it's picking up steam, then you can kind of put in more and more efforts.
Cool. So a few questions left, more forward thinking. So Igor, I had this one for you. What does, and then anyone else can chime in, what does ongoing management look like? Who's involved typically? It's out there, it's running.
When it's product management, I once worked with someone that gave me a really interesting quote, which is, you should only track metrics that you're willing to act upon, because otherwise, like, what's the point? They might be nice to see, but like, what's the point? So when I'm talking about like track everything, what I'm implying by that is analyze what you're tracking and act on it, because otherwise you've just spent a whole lot of effort putting together Google Analytics to know that like people open this page. Okay, now what? Like, have a plan before you start tracking on what will happen if it goes this way versus this way, so that when it happens to go this way or this way, you know, okay, like here's my next step, right? But yeah, at that point, like if you're mature enough to be doing all that, chances are that you have someone with a product hat on. Like, you might not have someone like a product owner title, but with a product owner hat on, and then you kind of like iterate on that.
Yeah, to think of what's your feedback loop like? I mean, how are you getting feedback from customers, from users? I mean, it could be data, it could be like qualitative feedback with your support team. Do you have like a channel on Slack talking about, okay, this is the feedback, and so you're aggregating those? Do you have like maybe a weekly meeting or bi-weekly meeting internally as well with customers to kind of like get those things? Because the whole process is iterative. There's no sort of launch and forget about these integrations. You have to keep updating, you have to fix issues, you have to like evolve as well. The other thing I would say is like also keep your ears out for like, how's the landscape changing in your industry, right? I mean, if you're in the B2B marketing space, then there's some big players out there, right? I mean, Marketo, like HubSpot, those players. But there are like some upstarts too, which are getting more and more, you'll hear from customers too, right? They're getting more usage. At some point, you have to seriously consider, like, even though with limited resources, being able to kind of adopt more integrations to that, right? So being in touch with your sales, being in touch with the market, using your network, I think that's another way of kind of like, okay, where should my direction be?
So pretty cross-functional, actually, sounds like.
Very much.
Management. And then who's typically the owner of it, if you had to say?
Depends on the size of your company.
Yeah.
I think product, but there's not necessarily, again, like I work with a lot of startups, so there's 5% of them that have someone with a title product owner. There's someone, the CEO, sometimes me, sometimes a developer, sometimes a QA. The best QAs turn into product owners that has that hat on, and then it's that. And then the previous question of like, how do you do it? What's the cadence? I like meetings. I like useful meetings, but I like meetings because that gets everyone in the same room and actually like actively talking about it rather than like shooting messages in Slack across the fence. So pretty much everyone I work with that's at the stage to have these sorts of meetings, we typically have like a half-hour meeting a week to look at our KPIs and see, okay, are they going in the right direction? What we need to change? And I also have a half an hour meeting looking at like an APM, which is an application process monitoring, like a Datadog or a Dynatrace or like something like that, because especially as you're growing, you might have problems you're not aware of. So you put something in place to track like slowdowns in your queries, page loads, that kind of stuff, because your clients won't tell you. They'll just fester on it.
And so for us, for newer integrations, like that have 1 or 2 or 3 customers, basically the customer is the owner of that. So when the integration no longer works or something, they'll notify us, and then we can kind of go on, because we cannot monitor every
So
single.
they tell you if it's not working.
Right. Yeah. Especially if we're building it one off for them. Right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Okay, interesting. So it really depends on the size of the org.
Yeah.
That I assume is a little bit smaller size when that happens.
Yeah.
But I mean, as Igor was saying, somebody who wears a product hat, like, I mean, it could be like this founder, right? I think that's a small company, or if it's more organized, you have like different departments in your product org, like a PM of like platform or something like that.
Cool. And then as far as growth and scaling, like how do you know you're ready to do that? Because we talked a lot about starting slow, start in one lane. You know, how do you know as a founder, like, okay, besides, yes, you have enough money that you can now really expand. Let's say besides that.
You have customers asking for it. Usually. I mean, sometimes it's truly innovative, right? Like, I don't know who had the first marketplace. Does anybody know? I don't know. But like sometimes it's truly innovative. But like, for example, the biggest marketplaces weren't innovations. You know, like the App Store, the iOS App Store, that wasn't the first App Store. That wasn't the first mobile App Store. It was just the best executed one, right? Because they saw the market wanting it. Same like Atlassian has an unbelievable marketplace. They might have actually been innovative in that space, because I don't think there was any other kind of like tools like Jira that had a marketplace at the time. But yeah, usually it's not like, usually someone had a brilliant idea for like something de novo. Don't listen to it unless you have buy-in from people that would be like, oh yeah, I'd use that.
All right. My final one I'm throwing in there, but I think it's easy enough for everybody. What would be one tip or best practice you would share with the audience when you think about your app, building an app ecosystem? Just one.
Go.
Talk to your customers.
Talk to your customer, but also slow. start small and iterate. I think that's like, don't fall into pressure that you have to build like 10 different integrations.
Yeah. Talk to your customer, start slow, but if you decide to do it, talk to your CTO. So you do it right.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, that's all the questions we had.
Yeah, anybody. Yeah.
We on? I don't know. Do you use any sort of data prototyping or something lighter that you would put in front of customers so they can see some either like, not Figma, but like mock-ups of what an integration would look like without building the full shippable thing, either in like using something like Vercel feature branches or just hand-done data prototypes that have worked well for you?
Yeah, I mean, the answer depends on whether you're B2B or B2C. When you're B2B, typically, if you've got this like champion customer that's asking for this integration, you like sit down, you have like a BA session with them of like, what would this integration mean to you? How would you want to use it? Let's sketch it out. Let's get a whiteboard. Like, it's
like
a whole
gross,
thing.
It's more like $10 a month.
Yeah, if it's yeah, so if it's that, the best kind of like product people in the room, and there's some talks I think this week that had those like really good people, would tell you to get a focus group of champion customers, get them in the room, get them on a webinar, and be like, hey, we're thinking about this. We value your input. Let's talk about how to build this.
Right, it's only so far you can get without having people see if it's a data product.
Oh,
So I'm trying to figure
yeah.
out like cheap ways to get from like the pretty mocks and qualitative interviews to not having to pay lots of money to
Yeah.
get something like fully built for these integrations with our business.
But
we have to prioritize like lots of integrations.
Talk about that in terms of a user story, right? Because to them, like they're not gonna fabricate a UI for you out of thin air, right? But they're thinking about it like, if I had data that looked like this, it would be valuable for me to see correlated data that looks like this. And then you're there being like, if I gave you data that looks like this based on data that looks like this, would that be valuable for you? Right? Like how that happens, that's like the meat, you know?
And if there's a possibility that there's a competitor that you could show. So for instance, if somebody asked me, hey, can you build a Zendesk integration? And we don't have a Zendesk integration, but we have a Freshdesk integration. I can show them how it works and then let their imagination kind of take over from there.
Yeah, I mean, currently I've worked with companies which we've kind of relied on mockups and all these different things. And currently we have a model in our organization where we do like a full sort of clickable sort of user interface that we can give to customers and get their sort of feedback from it. And we can see them how they interact with it and how what kind of like areas where they can actually.
That would be with fake data. But
They'll play around with that, right? And there was a session actually on Monday I attended over here, which is around data storytelling. So there was like a lot of good points from around that too. Yeah.
Anyone else here in the crowd? Yeah. Just the people at home can hear you. Sandeep, I heard you mention going to the AEs at the partner organization after the fact, and you were thinking, given the opportunity, you would do it the other way around. I'm working with a client right now who their solution will only work as an integration to one of 3 big players in the market. They're trying to figure out which big player, and really all 3 are equal. Is that enough information for you to figure out, oh, let's just go to the sales team of each of them and see which one would sell it? Or how would you move forward with that?
I'd go the reverse direction. Get as many customers as you can for one particular partner. And then once you have that story built out, then you could go approach your ideal integration partner. So build the story first and then go to them, because then the more compelling the story, the more support you might get from that one dream partner of yours.
How tight is that integration? Like, do you need for it to be native with like one of these 3, or can you build something more generic and do something via like APIs, Zapier? Like, why not all 3?
Given my understanding, they don't have the resources to develop all 3. It's a rather extensive integration, and ideally down the road it will be all 3, but they have to pick one. And to your point about customers, they don't have any yet because they have to pick one of these partners first. So
and pick the partner that has the biggest market share of the type of users that need this solution. I mean, that's like a very generic answer, but you know,
or like LinkedIn connections.
yeah.
Who do you have the most of? Because again, it's who do you know at these places, right? So in the end, that's how you get buy-in at one of these places. So pick one based on that. I would say is like, where do you know the most amount of people?
The other thing everything being same, like all these other things, like customers and connection that you had. I think like one thing that you can think about is just being efficient. Like, what is the easiest one of those integration to actually pull out, right? Because you're not going to do it right the first way. So you will sort of like need to iterate and those things. What are your capabilities for engineers as well? So given everything else, it's like you don't have enough knowledge, everything's the same. I think that's like one way to figure it out. I mean, it's not like the most can think about the most brilliant idea in the world, but I think that's something you can do.
Actually, I changed my answer.
Okay.
I'd go with that one.
Yeah.
Go with the easiest one to build on, and build it out, and then prove it out. Because again, if it's valuable to one, it's going to be valuable to all of them. So I would.
I like the what Igor combination.
Yeah.
The one that has customers that you want, like
Yeah.
your.
But what are the three? Like, what are we talking about here? Like, what are these three things?
I don't want to give too much away.
All right.
Like they're talking Siemens, Autodesk, and one other, and it's a rather large.
It's Autodesk. Dassault. Who's the third one?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay. Autodesk is the easiest to integrate with out of those three. Good luck.
There we go.
Excellent. That got the answer. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room? I know right now we don't have anyone online that has to ask any questions, so feel free.
We were so good. There's no question.
Yeah.
Or they're all confused.
Yeah.
This can be afterwards too.
So we have a really small team, and our product is predicated upon actually ingesting data from integrations into one place. So we're bringing data in as opposed to having you use our app somewhere else. Do you have any suggestions on low-cost dev shops that just can do, once we're confident in doing validated integrations, we have a specific way of doing them. We just want to do a bunch of them in a fast, inexpensive manner. So
If
you have
only
any
one of the
suggestions.
panelists had 50 developers that could help you.
I'm sorry, I came in late. I didn't, I apologize. I didn't know.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later.
So we do have one that came through online. What are your thoughts on app-based communities agnostic from platforms such as Facebook? Will society choose niche community-specific experiences over general platforms?
I had a whole LinkedIn post about this like 2 days ago. Is this a plant? Who is it?
Cynthia Moore?
No, I don't
online?
know. No, communities are part of your ecosystem. So the same way that I was talking earlier of like kick-ass customer service is part of your ecosystem as much as like an app, as much as a physical product, a community, and like an actual community, not like followers on Instagram or whatever, but like an actual community that's active, that's talking about your brand, that like is passionate enough about your brand to spend time on a Facebook group or something talking about it. That's part of your ecosystem, and it's a part that needs to be like nurtured hard. I have who here knows about AppSumo? Yeah, a lot of people. I bought a thing on AppSumo about a year ago. It's like okay, but they have a Facebook group where the founders are super responsive. So here's a tool that I would have abandoned a long time ago that I use all the time because I know that I can always go to this group, and it's a Facebook group in this case, which is weird actually, but it is. Like throw my problem in there, and like 10 people are gonna like discuss it and figure it out. If it's on Discord, same thing. My post that I was talking about a few days ago was that like I think the future is in these like micro niche sites. So like not a Facebook or a LinkedIn that's just like everyone under the sun, but like LinkedIn for elementary school teachers, Facebook for snowboarders, like that kind of stuff. And so I think the world's going to start to fragment that way, because you can't support every type of niche like hobby out there in a Facebook group. And so, yes, I support it. Build a community. It builds your brand.
And yeah, I would say also, building a community is probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. So going out to where the conversations are currently happening is probably the easiest way. So like Igor said, going to LinkedIn and monitoring Twitter, and that's the easiest way because you're going to them versus asking them to come to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have a quick question. So we're trying to test out two particular type of offerings, and we're not sure which one is going to be sticky. To our minds, we have a core, and the other is just let's see. So in order to test the second one, we're thinking of putting it behind a paywall and see whether or not people will pay for that feature, then that would determine whether or not we should keep it on or let it go, and maybe keep the core free. Just, I think my question is, what's the best way to actually determine which feature to go with, and whether our logic makes sense?
Both of these features are developed already.
Yes.
Then why do you need to pick if you've already done them both?
Because we're not really strong on the second one, but we just built it because we had the capacity to do it. And we're like, but we think one is our particular core. And we're like, oh, since we built this one, let's just put it out there and maybe get people to pay for it. And if they do pay for it, then there's something there.
So no users yet for either of
No,
them?
we're still in beta.
I wouldn't put one against a paywall at this stage. I think you want as many people to have access to it at this stage to see learn from them. How sticky are they? How often are they using it? Get feedback from them. Then it sounds like you want to decide where to invest more.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wouldn't ask for payment as a way.
Because how much were you going to ask?
Something very little, maybe like.
Then don't ask.
Yeah, can you do it as a trial, like 2
So
tries?
it's B2C product. So definitely, even if we're going to charge, it's not going to be very expensive anyway, and it's going to be a subscription model.
Yeah, but you could create like a little bit of like a early adopter effect. You could be like free for a limited time, do that and see which feature gets used more.
Like an A/B test, since they're both developed. That's why they're already there, exist. So
Yeah,
I
like
would
a
just
trial
A/B test them both.
And we just released this where we did it so that if you're interested, so in the UI, you have a little banner. If they're interested, they click on it, they fill out a form. That way you can get at least all of these insights of why they're doing it. So I think that's super valuable. But yeah, I wouldn't put it behind the paywall. If you could do some trial, like by usage or by time, I think that would be your best bet.
Thank you.
Hi, what do you guys think about the Apple Vision, like the new augmented reality ecosystem, and do you think that will integrate with the existing App Store?
Have you ever read the book Snow Crash?
Yeah, something about metaverse.
Yeah, it's like one of the original. It's like before the internet, like 1991, maybe 1992, and it basically predicted like another life and vision and all that. Yeah, of course, there's going to be people that use it. There's going to be a whole industry around it, just like there was in Second Life. People were buying real estate with real money. Yeah, I mean, what is the question? Do I think it has legs? Yeah, of course, people will pay for anything.
Do you think it'd be different from the existing paradigm of, using API calls and having that sort of, or do you think it'll shift to something different?
That's a deeper question. That's a good question. Did you guys hear the question?
A little.
Repeat the question louder because
The
this
last
is
one,
a
yeah.
pondering question.
Outside my expertise.
Yeah. So do you think having like the XR, immersive that app, like the Apple Vision Pro App Store, is it going to shift the app ecosystem paradigm from the existing of like, you have a backend database and you call, and now that you have this new, do you think it'll shift it, or do you think
it grows the pie? I don't think it shifts it. I think it grows the pie. Just the same way that, there's plenty of startups that are going live right now that don't have AI. That's fine. You don't need AI for everything. App Buttons doesn't have AI yet. No, but yeah, it's the same thing. Like that phones aren't going anywhere. So that app store is going to keep growing. People are still using DB2 somewhere, yeah, it grows the pie. It grows the pie.
I'm working on a very small in-app ecosystem for a company that I work at, and they're essentially a small pool store, but they've been around for over 34 years. They have a current system which is very non-functional, and basically no one uses it for much. We're mostly on pen and paper, and I'm trying to recreate their current system. Are there any I guess, good starting points that you would recommend I can push forward with? Because I've been researching CRM systems and Zapier integrations and how to set it all up. But my biggest problem is the willingness for our company to kind of even accept a new program. The one we've been using previously is very not good, as I had mentioned, and I'm trying to get them to really see the potential of how much time we could save, the money and everything. Didn't know if you had any recommendations towards that.
So are you trying to create a new app ecosystem for the stock? For the company?
Essentially,
Trying to
yeah.
launch in 3. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to sit down. It's a longer conversation, obviously, this, but I'm happily sit down with you and offer some suggestions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, ping me after.
We're just about at time. Does anyone have any lingering questions? No? All right, well, thank you
Yeah.
so much to the panel. I appreciate the time you spent with us this afternoon.